Okay, so I think we can get started here. So Martin, thank you for your time. Thank you for being on our Alchemy series, Alchemy Spotlight, which is focused on the individual, the person in the profession of procurement, supply chain, and sustainability. And today we're going to deep dive into your story with Talent Drive, the world of recruitment, people, and everything associated to it. So a warm welcome from my side, and I would like to hand over to Alex. I'll keep an eye on the chat, so don't worry about that. And for the people who are listening, obviously you can submit any questions or remarks in the chat, and we'll have a conversation there as well. So thank you. Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Harold. We're still trying to decide when is the best time for these because we have people in 80 countries. The time zone is varied, obviously, and in India, for example, now it's 8:30, no 9:30 in the evening, and in the US they're just getting up, I guess. But it is recorded. It will go into the personal development space probably later on tonight or tomorrow, and those who are unable to join it live will be able to watch it. So Martin, first of all, Harold's welcome you from myself. Welcome to you, CEO and founder owner of the Talent Drive, and on behalf of the Alchemie Network, you were our first recruitment partner. Yes. So a big thank you to you in deciding to take that leap and moving forward. And Harold talked about your journey. Okay, so it would be interesting to know what's your journey been in recruitment, and when did you fall in love with procurement, and when did you decide that procurement was where it's at?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. Yeah, delighted to be your first partner in recruitment. So, look, great what you guys are doing and really building that community, which I'm a big advocate of, and I'm sure we'll talk about that today. Fell into procurement, recruitment. I'm not going to proclaim that I was at school or university and I was sat there going, I'm going to be a recruiter, and indeed in the procurement profession. But I was fortunate to land a job in recruitment doing procurement when I left university. So didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was studying sports science, looking like I was going to go down the sort of PE teacher route, and then pivoted and just fell in love with the recruitment profession and love dealing with people. And I think what I would say is in procurement, the community, I just love how it's so varied and it's such an eclectic mix of people from different backgrounds. You know, introverts and extroverts, and people that are focusing on the data side. They love the business partnering, the SRM. You know, procurement touches every part of a business. So I've just sort of fallen in love with, I guess, with the profession, and I've loved recruiting in it. So yeah, my whole career has been doing procurement recruitment, both agency, and I had a short stint in-house as well over at Coca-Cola. So, but yeah, I founded Talent Drive 5.5 years ago. So May 2019. Certainly the highs and lows, which I'm sure we'll talk about during this conversation. But we're now obviously 5.5 years strong. We built out our talent finance proposition as well back end of last year, so that's been running for 9 months. So a busy time. So schools are back, so we're busy. People are back in the offices now, which is good.
When you decided now is the time to set up my own business,
yeah,
how long was that process? Because it's a very brave, having built a business with Harold, and we are 137 days old, but it's over a year now in the making. I know the pain and heartache associated with that, but it was a much later time in my life. What was that process like? I mean, when did you sit your wife down and say, I'm thinking of going all in?
Well, the trick was I at least proposed to her first, so at least I had some level of commitment before I'm telling her I was going to jack in a very stable, good job and set up on my own. I think I'd always had a bit of a burning sort of desire to do it one day on my own. I think that's always been sort of part of it, probably since earliest days. And look, I was very lucky to work for two owners, which I learned a lot from. Got full access to P&L early days, got to learn how that sort of works and the mechanisms of running a business. You know, they were both small kind of SMEs in the recruitment world, so I was really lucky to sort of get to know how it all works. So, and I think that kind of gave me the confidence to be able to do it one day. And I think I just got to the point, this might sound really cheesy, but I was on a train journey home one night from my offices, and I just sort of said, well, look, I think it's time. At the time, I didn't have children. I now got my son. At the time, we weren't married. The mortgage was still around our necks, so there was still financial commitments. But I had almost that flexibility that perhaps I maybe now wouldn't necessarily have done. And my then fiance said, just go and do it. Let's just do it. We'll be fine. And that was it, really. You know, had the conversations with my MD at the time, who understood, and away we went, really. And I think I just saw a bit of a gap in the market. You know, again, probably a cliche line. A lot of people talk about gaps in the market and opportunities, but I just thought there was a real opportunity to do something a little bit different, to really invest in marketing and doubling down on things like podcasts and thought leadership stuff early on. And then we sort of gained momentum from there, really. And it's, you know, it's been a really enjoyable process. It's been very stressful, as you guys are experiencing, and you have the highs and lows and good days and bad days, like anything. But for me, my mantra has always just been, you know, work hard, be authentic with your audience, which I always talk about. And I think that will be a sustainable model. So, yeah, that's where we are now.
Yeah. You talked about the highs and lows. And I think the difference when you've got your own business is that the highs are considerably higher and the lows are considerably lower. So the kind of the delta between the two is big. But let's just talk about the lows, really. I guess one low point, having started it in 19, you kind of went straight into COVID and lockdown. Yeah. And no one was moving anywhere, really, then. How did you manage that period? How did you differentiate yourself?
Yeah, that was a tough time, and I've spoken about that openly. You know, we were 9 months in, and literally overnight, you know, I went to bed with 7 jobs vacancies, and I woke up, and from sort of 4 a.m. very early email from one of our clients to probably about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the jobs had gone. It really was that quick and dramatic. And that point was really tough, right? You know, there wasn't much sort of cash in the bank. We'd only just had, you know, opportunity to really sort of try and grow. I just rented an office space near where I live, and so there was some overheads creeping in as well. So it was tough, but I think I just decided, well, look, a lot of businesses aren't going to hire at the moment, but what we do have is a captive audience because of lockdown restrictions. Everyone was online. Everyone had more time and money essentially for people to go and invest in that. So I saw it as an opportunity to basically double down on our marketing, which at the time my accountant wasn't best pleased with me spending even more money during a very difficult time in the economy and in the world. Of course, you know, health was everyone's priority, but we actually spent more time doing webinars, you know, things like this, podcasts, and just putting more and more marketing content out there, and it just allowed people to remember the Talent Drive name and what we were trying to do, and really elevate the profile of procurement. So what happened is, as we started restrictions started to lift and businesses started to build some confidence again, they remembered us, and we did some pro bono work, which some businesses sort of said that's not a good idea. There's mixed views on that, I know, but I thought, well, look, I'm going to support businesses. It's not about the money right now; it's about supporting and doing the right thing. And I'm a big believer of the long-term sort of, you know, gains from that. So yeah, we added more marketing behind it. We added more time, more investment, supported people, did more workshops, interview prep, CV tips, particularly people, you know, it was a good chance for people to refresh their CVs because there's never enough time in the day and the weeks to do that. And, you know, also pivoted into markets that were hiring, you know, healthcare, the NHS, and we were successful in supporting some of those organizations that were recruiting. And we survived. Thankfully, it was just me. We didn't have a big overhead in terms of team. So we were leaner in that sense. And then as lockdown lifted, the business sort of grew from there.
Yeah.
But it's tough.
Let's talk about I guess that pivot during the time of You're kind of sociable chap anyway. You're nice to listen to. You're good to look at. So you don't have a face for radio. And you started the podcasts. You restart them this Thursday.
Yep.
And the Talent Talk series, which I've been on myself. I think you do a great job. Poppy Lister does a fantastic job from a marketing perspective.
Yep.
And as does your camera and editing crew. And just a shout out for Poppy as well. She got married last week, so congratulations to her. Really, really great to see that. Will you restart that series? It's on my download list, so every week it gets downloaded along with a lot of other kind of Aston Villa material and the art of procurement as well. I listen to a lot, but what do you get from that, and what do you think the listeners get from that? Because there's it is, I think it's superb, and I think the content is excellent, but how do you decide who and what and where that you're going to talk to?
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, and you're a great. I saw that here Aston Villa as well. You're a great guest on, and I'm really passionate about the procurement profession. Really am. I love talking to procurement people. I find it fascinating. Every guest is different. There's some synergies there with recruitment and procurement actually that people fall into recruitment. I think a lot of people fall into recruitment, and a lot of people fall into procurement. It's really interesting parallel when I speak to people about how did you get into it. Often they were in another role, or they'd seen a job advertised online and just explored it. So but what I get out of it, I just love talking to the procurement profession. My pure goal with the Talent Talks podcast is elevate the profession. There's no monetary gain for me from it. We don't obviously charge our guests, or there's not anything else around that. It's purely just to, maybe I should, no, I won't. No, joking. But it's great just to talk to people, talk about their career, puts them in the spotlight. Look, it supports them. Some people have been on the show and over time they've actually got jobs off the back of it. Amazing, or they've at least had the confidence from that to go off. Tom Mills, it was one of my earliest guests. Now he's flying on social media all over the place, and I was his first thing that he sort of did, I guess, outside of the role he was doing at the time. And it's amazing to see the confidence he's built as a great example and sort of thriving in that. So, and there's lots of other great examples of procurement people, putting their head above the parapet and actually speaking openly about their career, their background, the challenges they face. It's certainly a tough profession to be in, as well as a rewarding one. I just love it, and it supplements the job, the day job. Obviously it's stressful. Recruiting for businesses, challenging stakeholders, candidates dropping out of processes, all the stuff and the pressures of running a business. So it's almost a bit of a cathartic thing for me in a way to go and just listen to great procurement people talk around their careers. And as long as people are still listening, I'll continue doing it. And this Thursday is a bit of an interesting one because it's actually interviewing me. So it's a bit of a strange episode. So the table is a bit turned, and I'm talking about my career and background and what I'm seeing from a recruitment perspective, which we'll talk about today. And it was kind of weird being in the guest chair rather than the host chair, like it is today. So actually twice in a couple of weeks. So
okay, so you've that's recorded then. You've already done that. So that was the warm up for today. So all of this is
in
prepared.
a way, yeah, exactly. No, try not to be, but it was. I didn't know any of the questions, like I don't know today, other than sort of a top line. So. Hope our listeners like that. So something a bit different. Then we've got a great host of guests coming on over the next few months.
Excellent. Let's talk about how you stand out. So as a team, it's quite a crowded space. When early days of my procurement, kind of 35, 40 years ago, that was kind of Percon. That was about it. Now there are many recruiters. It's kind of gone like this. How do you stand out, and what are the values that you bring to ensure that you do stand out in that kind of noisy market?
Yeah, look, it's a competitive market for sure. And even in the 16 years that I've done it, I agree. There's been more players that come through. So we've got to work harder. We've got to sharpen our pencil and do things differently. I think, look, what I ask for the team, is quite a simple message. It's, to work hard for your candidates, support them, transparency is everything for us. So we talk at our mantra as sort of delivering talent with impact, but for us, impact means we're efficient, we're transparent at all times, you know, and we just try and get to know the people we work with. You know, recruitment's a people's game. It really isn't rocket science. You can engage with people, but the fundamental skill is you've got to be a good listener. You've got to be able to listen to your audience. There's a lot of recruiters out there in the world. There's a lot of salespeople out in the world that can talk a good game. And that's not really what I'm interested. I'm interested in understanding the people we work with. So if you understand the people you work with, you can build rapport, you can build empathy, you know, they trust you, and you're there to support them. And we don't fill every role. You know, we don't support every candidate. We don't place every single candidate that we register. I'd love to, but that's just not realistic. But what we do try and do is we give a very transparent service. We support them if we can. We'll share clients we work with. We'll share jobs we've got. We'll also share jobs we don't work. And it might be one of our competitors is working it, or we've seen it directly online. And we'll say, look, maybe this could be a really interesting one for you. So I think that's the bit that I hope stands us out from the crowd. There's no sales pressure from us. If people don't want to work with us, that's cool. But what we do is a professional service. We know our stuff. The team are experienced. And, you know, and hopefully that return of investment long term is that they'll want to work with us one day. They have a good experience, whether that's as a client, as a candidate, or both. And we keep driving it that way. There's no bell that we ring, we get a fee in. There's no transactional mentality for us. It's very much around people engaging with people. And it's as simple as that, really, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And what's very apparent is you can see that internally. So everyone in the team is happy. They're enjoying their role. And you do a lot of things to socially engage and connect with the community as well. There's a lot of charitable stuff that you ensure that the values of the company spread down into your team.
Yeah.
Does everybody support that, or is that part of your recruitment process that you make sure that you get people with the same vision and feelings?
Well, you know yourself, Alex, as a leader and someone that's managed big teams, a lot larger teams than me, you know, the people have got to align to your values, or it doesn't work. They've got to align to your personal values as well as your company. But I guess the fortunate, privileged place that I'm in is that, you know, Talent Drive is, I guess, my business. So I can focus my personal values on the companies, if that makes sense. So anyone we hire has to align to those. So look, we're really proud of the work we do locally and indeed regionally with charity partners. We've got a local children's hospice, Julia's House, that we raise a lot of money each year. We do our treks and walks. I've got a 24 hours, 24 peaks thing in a couple of weeks for the charity, which I actually totally forgot about. My wife reminded me last night, so that's going to be fun. I've got a call straight after this actually to do a safety induction, so that's going to be interesting. And My Time to Young Carers Charity, another one. So we love that. We love supporting. And I think it's really important to give back. And my team will feel really strongly about that as well. But they've got to buy into that. You know, I wouldn't hire someone that doesn't see those values and doesn't act the way that I've talked about in our approach to market. So, but that's the real privileged part of the job. That's the real, you know, and have stressful days and challenging months. The fact that we can give back to the community and charities that I'm really passionate about, that's really rewarding for me. And I know it is for the team as well. And, you know, they've done a great job in supporting with those as well.
Absolutely. And that comes across. And one of the external kind of outward looking things that you've done as an organization, and I didn't know what it was, but it's now Talent Drive B Corp. And there are only, I think, 9,000 companies that are connected with this. And I've read up on it, so I know what it is now, but I didn't before. Do you want to just explain to how that differentiates you as well?
Yeah, sure. So as you know, in the procurement world, the ESG agenda, you know, that sustainable way of sourcing is massive. And I think any business that doesn't have that as part of their business sort of mantra and policy almost, is going to be behind the curve. And we feel really, really strongly about that as well. But the B Corp is essentially a sustainable way of running your business. It's making sure that your workers are paid fairly. They have, you know, fair hours, fair contracts. You know, every supplier we work with, we have that transparency at always. So there's that real ethical lens to it that we feel really strongly about. And no one's doing it in our space from recruitment. They talk about it. They talk around the importance of ESG and procurement, but actually go and do it. You know, we're proud that, I think I'm right in saying we're the only procurement recruitment agency globally that are B Corp. I'm certainly not aware of any in the UK. I think in Dorset, where I live, there's 26 companies that are B Corp. And we're really proud of that. You know, Poppy, again, was a massive part to support the process. It was 8 months to get our B Corp status. It took a long time, but we're really, really proud of that. And it's something that embodies everything we do, and actually every supplier we work with. So there are certain companies and certain sectors we won't work with because it doesn't stand against our, our B Corp status and the way they do things. So, it's almost part of our vetting process when we're selecting partners that we want to work with, whether that's a client or whether that's a supplier or whether that's a member of the team joining us as well. So yeah, we're on that B Corp journey. I've learned a load through that process. I mean, some of the ethical trading policies and things I had to read up on, I've become a bit of a whiz on that now. But yeah, it's something we're delighted to be a part of now, and it's a great. Yeah, I think just over 9,000 people, companies that are in that B Corp community. It's a brilliant community. Some great collaboration that happens there as well. So yeah, we're really excited to be part of it.
Yeah, and someone else that we need to welcome on this call is Catherine Thorpe, who's joined you as your
Yes.
operations manager. She's on the call. I can see that. So welcome, Catherine.
Catherine.
But I guess you're going to hand over all of this work to her now.
Yeah. Over to I've warned of the process that we had to go through. So yeah, no, it's all on her now. No, so yeah, delighted to have her on board. So yeah, great addition to the team.
Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about the recruitment process, and how do you work with? Because I guess you're kind of in the middle. So I'd like to understand how you manage that. I'm kind of thinking football agent in my head, but you're working for the client, trying to find a candidate, but you're also responsible for the candidate as well and their well-being, and you have to ensure that if someone's wrong for the job, you don't put them forward, even if they want it. How do you manage that process?
Yeah, that's hard because particularly for senior leadership jobs, everyone thinks they can do that job. So if we get a procurement director role in, we'll have like, a crazy amount of applications versus if it's something more like a category manager level or a buyer level. So I think that's the hardest part of the job, is to say to people no. It's difficult because they're full of enthusiasm, they think they can do it. But ultimately, as obvious as it sounds, only one person can get the job, right? So we do have to let a lot of people down. So I think for us, it's just getting to know our client base and what works, both technically and also culturally. I think what we've seen, in terms of skipping ahead, but in terms of market trends and insight, there's been a lot of shift from that IQ to EQ in the procurement market. So although technical skills are still very important, there's a lot more around the social skills, the emotional intelligence that candidates offer. So I think we have to use that as part of our judgment as well, which actually makes it harder to feedback because ultimately we're saying you're not culture aligned to that business. And that is sometimes a bit of a subjective thing. So that can be difficult because we've got more candidates than we have jobs, obviously. So it's about managing them. And back to my earlier point, it's staying close to them, making sure that they stay regular update with our content. And there's some value there, right? Because we don't place them and maybe we haven't discussed a job with them the last few months and they're active. We want to hopefully give them something at Talent Drive. So even if it's a podcast listen or a blog that we write or some bit of marketing intel, at least they're getting some value from us as well, rather than just jobs that Talent Drive are working. So we try and offer a little bit more to our community.
Yeah, and I guess these candidates are your future clients, totally. So they are the people of the future that are going to be hiring and want to be using you. So when you're are there clients that you won't work with, or is so you've talked about candidates you're not right for the job, but are there clients also that you think actually, you know what, this doesn't feel right?
Yeah, definitely. So I won't mention the name of them, but obviously, one of my first ever clients got really excited about working with them. As you can imagine, startup mode, great. We'll support. We did fill the role, but they reneged on payment terms. It took them over 150 days to work with us, to pay us. Sorry, we removed it. We said this isn't a collaborative relationship. This isn't sort of reciprocated for the two of us. So we removed them. They're a big company, a big FTSE organization, but we made the brave decision to walk away. It was a really hard decision, but actually, if they're not going to respect that, and we've had other clients where we've had like one decision maker, every decision goes through them, and it's very sort of clunky. And they, you get the occasional client that try and lowball with offers to see how candidates negotiate, which for me, these are extreme circumstances, and this is, rest assured, the minority of clients. But we've had a few where we've just gone, this just doesn't work. And we just had a really, adult, mature conversation to say, look, it doesn't align to our values, and we're probably not what you want either. I think, to be clear, they might not want what we offer, and that's okay. It's important not to take it personally, just take it professionally and move on. As I say, it's the minority, but there are times when we've had to do that.
When we talk about the customers that you like to work with and that you're aligned with, how do you have that discussion about ensuring that the internal candidate review has been properly looked at before just going straight out to external? Because I guess, again, it's better for you if they go external, but you're there to help them and to teach them and to ensure they're doing the right thing as well.
Yeah, great question. I mean, we really encourage our procurement leadership, the hiring managers, to do the internal process first before they engage with us. Running an internal process in parallel with an external search, for me, isn't a smart use of time. I'd much rather prefer that they kind of, either they find someone internally, but they complete that process before going external, because at that point you've got your benchmarking, you know what good looks like internally, and then you can move on. I think almost finding external benchmarking versus internal talent, I don't think it works. It's difficult for us, and commercially, but also professionally and ethically, it just doesn't feel right. So we do really encourage. It's almost one of my first questions when I'm on a briefing call. It's, have you exhausted your internal, talent? Have you reviewed that yet? Has that been completed? So that's the ideal for us. I think the best clients we work with, on that point of the question, going back to your earlier statement, I'd say some of the best clients we work with now are people that were buyers years ago that I worked with and are now CPOs and procurement directors, because you've got that longevity of relationship, you've built that trust, engagement, rapport, you've worked with them in numerous different organizations that they work with, and they get us, they get me, they understand the team and their values and what they're about, and they're it doesn't matter if there's only 4 of them in the team and there's only one hire every 2 years. It doesn't matter for me. But the people that they'll come to you, they'll maybe call me and just say, I'm thinking about hiring this. What do you think about this on salary? Or what do you think about this as a category or a reach? That's the stuff that kind of gets me out of bed in the morning now when a CPO calls me and say, I'm thinking about the structural changes. I love being part of the conversation. I feel it's a real privilege to. For me, I still like recruiting, but we're very fortunate. We've got a really strong management team that can do that. So consulting, advising and offering support, that's the bit that I really love.
Okay. I've been on the end of that. There's nothing worse than hearing from the company, we've decided to go with an internal candidate, and you think that was always going to happen. If you have an aligned process, you're helping these organizations build high-performing teams, okay? And we've talked a lot in the past, you and I, around diversity of thought, diversity of behavior, diversity of gender, diversity of age. How do you ensure and support that they don't go too far in one direction? Because I think there's a real need for companies to have a balance. Absolutely, you need some youth and you need some Gen Z and you need some passion and some energy, but don't lose sight of what the cornerstone leader can bring to that as well. Someone my age that's been around and understands a little bit. But do you think sometimes companies go too far in one direction and forget the value of experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And they made hires and they've retrospectively called me and said, we've hired someone too junior. So yeah, it does happen. And I think there's a danger that it goes too that way. I think what we try and encourage, if they need real experience and maturity, there's often opportunities to actually maybe bring them in as a contractor, an interim. If you want to supplement some experience and then in inverted commas, grow some internal talent or bring in someone that can grow in the role, that there's nothing wrong with that. But I think don't lose sight of the maturity you perhaps sometimes need in it. And I think it's just having that really honest and transparent conversation. I think diversity of thought's key. Again, we've spoken about before. I think it's important to have people from different diverse backgrounds, industry sectors, thought. But yeah, you don't want a cookie cutter of the same, hiring manager each time. You don't want to have the same person sort of looking in the mirror back at you, but you don't want to go too far the other way, because I think that can cause some real issues down the line and a bit of too much unwanted disruption in an organization.
Yeah, and you're right. I think Harold knows the organization, but a company I've worked with in the past had, they put every senior leader through a a process because they decided that this profile of person works here, and therefore everybody should look into this square. And it was like Stepford Wives. It was terrible because there was no diversity of thought and no diversity of thinking. Just before we move on to the questions, one thing that's changed a lot since COVID is hybrid working. Hybrid working is a good thing, but hybrid working, smart working, doesn't mean home working. And there are some organizations and some individuals that have got lost in that, I think. And how do you ensure you lose? Because for white collar people, they can do this smart working or hybrid working, and it's become a perk. No longer do you have to buy £9,000 rail ticket to go into London every day because you're only expected to go there one day a week. But the blue collar can't do that. So the forklift truck driver and the person in the canteen and the security guard, they can't do this. So you've got this kind of two-tier working. Do you think we've gone too far, and there'll be a retreat on going back the other way going forward?
I mean, there has been a retreat. I mean, that's happening now. I mean, we're seeing it with our clients. We've had a lot of clients who are putting people on home-based contracts, come into the office once every 6 months. The problem is, yourself, you learn through osmosis and around people, and it's really hard to get that same engagement and that learning and almost the sort of camaraderie of being in an office and those water cooler conversations. You don't get them on a Teams call or a video call. I'm definitely not a go back in the office 5 day a week, nor would I ever be, because to be blunt, I wouldn't have a team. They'd all go. But I think there's a balance, and I think sometimes the shift has gone too much that way. I think we're seeing this sort of 2 and 3 policy, which seems quite common now, 2 days in, 3 at home, or 3 and 2, depending on the business, which I think is okay. I mean, my team, we try and get into London on a Monday together and all sort of have our team meeting and share successes and collaborate. And I think the rest of the week, I just say, look, manage your diary as you see fit. But I think for any commercial role, and I include recruiters in that, I think for any commercial role, any sales role, anything like that, you need to be in front of people at some point. We're here to talk about procurement. I don't believe a procurement professional can do their job effectively being fully remote. That's my view. I don't think you can be fully remote. I don't think you need to be in the office every day. And there's a few clients on that end, and they're losing headcount. They're losing people because they're going. But I think you just need to be a bit sensible how that looks now. There are pressures because real estate, the offices, they've got these big leases and there's big cost pressures that they need people back in an office. But I think some level of hybrid working where they come in, make sure your team's there. I've spoke to a procurement director this morning that went in the office yesterday, and none of his team were there. He was kind of like, well, what's the point of me being there? So I don't, you've got to be smart with it, and you've got to ideally be around the team, but it doesn't need to be 5 days a week, Monday to Friday back in the office, which it probably was, wasn't it? Circa 2017, 18, probably pre-COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go through some of the questions online. So one from Richard here. He's kind of similar age to me, so I guess I understand which end of the scale he's looking at here. But is age discrimination a factor in recruitment? Do you see that? Do you see? And I guess this is where people have decided we want to bring in someone, then their profile, they are this age, this gender, this background. Does that really exist, or is it unconsciously existing?
It's definitely unconsciously existing. Definitely. A business that tell me they want a YBT doesn't mean they want to hire a 55-year-old man or woman, 60-year-old or whatever. So yes, it does happen unconsciously. Consciously, very rarely. I think if a business said to me, Martin, I want to hire someone that's within the age bracket of 26 and 36 or whatever, I wouldn't work with them. So I think, and I think most recruiters would probably agree. But I think there is some unconscious bias there, and goes back to that point I made earlier around like almost hiring yourself again. There's a danger of that. I think not a talent drive. I think a few years ago I was, we all go through those stages of going, almost want a bit of a mini me. Is that realistic or not? So I do think that is something that's quite prevalent, and we have to manage that expectation. But I think again, sometimes businesses will get someone that they talk about 2 or 3 years outside of university or college or whatever, and that's the right fit. Well, actually, it goes back to your point around diversity of thought. We need to actually think about people. What's wrong with saying you could get someone that's sort of maybe looking at the end of their career that wants more flexibility, that doesn't necessarily want the big payday? Well, isn't that a great hire? Someone offered me someone to that now that was a seasoned procurement recruiter, that was maybe just wanting to do 3 days a week and going to retire the next few years. Well, that's an interesting conversation, because look at how much experience I could gain. So I do think businesses need to think about that a bit more.
Yeah, totally agree. I think there's a balance to be struck, and especially for those younger generation who aren't in the office, they need people to nurture them and to train them and to coach them. And I think those people with experience, have that. A couple of questions here on sustainability. So one from Ben. Hi guys, have you seen an increase in demand for fractional sustainability hires? So I guess by fractional sustainability hires, this is people who are hybrid, part procurement and part sustainability, or maybe just sustainability. But certainly I saw in North America, the amount of hires of new roles being done are twice as high in the eco field than they are in standard hiring going on at the moment. So there's kind of a 4% growth versus 2% in the market. What are you seeing?
Yeah, definitely. I think sustainability is coming on a lot more job descriptions now. It's part of a remit of a procurement role. There's a real estate client at work at the moment. They're hiring a new a head of category, which 3.5 years ago when I hired it was professional services and IT. Now it's IT, professional services, sustainability. It's literally part of the mandate. It's part of the category remit, the role remit. So we are definitely seeing that as part and parcel of particularly procurement leadership roles, particularly as you start going into senior procurement manager, head of procurement type level. Sustainability is a big part of it.
Okay, so I guess that kind of goes to Richard's question, which is around when the recruitment process is going on. Those questions are being asked now of the clients around their knowledge and their experience and their desire, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a differentiator. So when if I think about candidates that are nailing interviews, what kind of things do hiring managers want to hear at the moment? They want to hear your ability to flex your communication style, i.e. if you're talking to a CFO or someone on the shop floor, can you do that? Do you have that gravitas to be able to flex depending on who you're talking to? The agility of thought, the agility of working across different categories, that's probably number 2. And then I would say number 3 is the ESG piece. Have you run anything, sustainable, any sustainable projects you've led? What have you done with it, rather than just traditional, supplier reviews or whatever it may be? If you've done stuff in that space, irrespective of what the role remit is, CPOs are going to want to hear that. Hiring managers are going to want to hear that at the moment.
And finally, in the questions in the chat anyway from Richard, what else are you seeing in the job market for procurement and supply chain roles, and how should candidates stand out in this? So, for example, what part is AI playing, or generative AI? Do actually the hiring people know anything about it? I mean, they're asking the questions, but do any of them actually understand it?
Sometimes not. I don't sometimes. I've had to upskill myself on people in my team have helped me out understanding the ChatGPT and some of the AI. It's here to stay. It's going to be part of the procurement methodology moving forward. It's going to be a massive part of the automation part of procurement. Certainly the more tactical part is going to be all automated. I think it's already there in a lot of companies. So I think having a technology or a proficiency in technology is going to be important in terms of skills and going to be a big differentiator for people. I think I talked about that ability to flex your communication style. I think that's important. If all you've ever bought is travel, unless you want to be a travel expert, you need to go and learn some other category areas. If you want to be a procurement director or a CPO, and I'm sure Alex, you'll agree, as a former CPO, you need to get to know other areas of spend, directs and indirects, supply chain and the more traditional sort of indirect services. So I'd be saying to people, show that off at an interview. I would say to people, in terms of prepping for interview, have 3 tangible examples of projects that you've led that you're proud of. And ideally have one of those projects that you've involved your team, you've had a success there. So I think a lot of people, when they go for interview, they talk about they talk about themselves, and that's great, but they forget about maybe some successes they've had in their team. Maybe someone's been internally promoted that they've directly managed, or maybe they've mentored someone, or they've helped run the graduate program, or tell people that. That's what people want to hear in interviews, and that's going to be the differentiator, because 8 out of 10 people are going to go into interview and they're going to talk about cost savings, and they're going to talk about contracts that they've delivered, and then they talk about supplier rationalization and all this sort of stuff, and that's fine. But you want to be remembered at coming out of an interview. So if you run a grad program, or if you run an ESG, project, or if you've really supported a member of the team in need, that's what people are going to want to hear, and that's for me the differentiators. So yeah, have those 3 key things ready in your mind to go into the interview. Because if you freeze a bit, you can then go, right, what are the 3 things, and you can relate it back, and it almost gets you back on track.
Thanks for that. I think you're so right. But when I've been recruiting or on the other side of the table, that's exactly how I've
I don't know if I answered the question there, actually. I went off on a tangent about interview prep, but we sort of got there.
Yeah, but I always used to deploy the STAR methodology, which I think where you physically, when you're answering a question, think about, well, what was the situation? What was the target? What actions did I do? And what was the result? Because if you use that process, it's easy to demonstrate what you did. Yeah. And when people start using we and they, you were just in the room. It's not something that you have actually delivered. And building your responses around STAR, I think is and anyone who doesn't understand what that is, go and read up on it, because it is a real guide, I think, to help you to sell and pop in an interview. So I don't have any more questions. Harold, do you have anything that
we covered? There's a question from Richard coming in at this minute. So how do you assess cultural fit when recruiting for procurement and supply chain teams, especially in global or diverse organizations? So how do you assess cultural fit? That's the core element.
My first, that's a great question, Richard. The first thing is, have they read about the company? I had one extreme example years ago when someone tried to blag what Talent Drive were. This is my early days, and they clearly hadn't read our website, hadn't understood our values. It doesn't work. And I was polite, but I just said, look, I'm really sorry. It doesn't, this isn't sort of going to go forward. So I think the first really obvious thing to assess someone's cultural fit is, have you read up on the company? Do you understand what our cultural values are and our alignment and stuff? I think quite early on, don't you, typically, if someone's going to be culturally aligned to your business and your values. If you're, for example, a procurement business that are incredibly passionate about sustainability and adding value, and it's less around trying to crank the handle with your suppliers, and someone comes in and just throws those metrics around cost savings they've got, there's an immediate red flag there around cultural alignment. So I think you can kind of gauge that in the first 5 minutes. Certainly diversity of thought, which we talked about, and diversity in organizations, you want that individual when they're talking to you, rather than just saying, I've always worked in this sector, or I've always worked in this kind of environment, this is the way I've always done it. That's not a cultural alignment to you.
No, there is a bit of intuition in this. I mean, I've had those interviews where after 5 minutes I felt this isn't going to work, but I've still given them the kind of 45-50 minutes that's appropriate, so they feel as they've gone through a proper process. But I've known early on that this isn't going to work. But similarly, I've known early on, after kind of 10 minutes, this is going so well. You are so perfect for this role, for the company, for the team. The fit is perfect. Your background is perfect. The way you think is ideal. And those are really special moments when that happens in an interview. I love that.
And then you've got to play it cool for 50 minutes after to pretend like you're putting them through the paces when you know they've got the job, or you know, you want to progress. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Couple more
Richard.
Martin. Yeah. So certifications, SIPs, Apex in the hiring process. How important are they when it comes to the, let's say, the paper?
Oh, okay. We can shake the tree a bit with this one. I mean, I think SIPs is outdated. That's my view. It adds value. I mean, look, a lot of procurement leadership I know are SIPs members. When I started, SIPs was like, you know, a must-have. You need to have SIPs qualification or be Part 6 qualified. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think it needs modernizing. I think there needs to be some more, I'm going to use the phrase again, but because it's, you know, diversity of thought. I don't think there's that at the moment in SIPs. So I think as a foundation for a graduate or someone that's an entry level, I think it gives some good grounding. Some of the negotiations, sort of skills trainings, and some of the fundamentals you get before getting to level 4, I think is good. I think it gives you a good solid foundation. It shows you're committed to the profession. There's an appetite to learn. So I do think there's some real positives. But I think when you come into sort of more procurement leadership, I think SIPs just needs a bit more of a bit of a refresh. And I think there's some more things that they could do at the moment as a community and as a profession. That's just my opinion. I know loads of people that are SIPs chairs and members and things. So, you know, some great people there, but I just think some more diversity of thought will help. So to answer Richard's question, I don't think it's as important as it was. I think it's a nice to have, is probably what most managers would say, but it's not imperative as part of a selection process.
It's good first-hand feedback there, Martin. So thank you for that.
Alex, are you abstaining from a view there, or what's your?
No, look, I did mine 35. I did mine 35 years ago, and I'm a fellow, and I think it brings a lot of value, and I think it brings a good core understanding of procurement. So I would always encourage people to do it if they feel like it's something they want to do.
Yeah.
I don't look at it and think, if you haven't got it, you're not going to be right for the job.
Yeah.
But partly because across Europe, there is such a high level of procurement, because we've been moving people around from organizations, from countries, building procurement centers of excellence. You know, I honestly believe Europe is way ahead of places like the Americas. I think procurement is America in general is of a lower standard. I think some of the stuff that you learn around process, around standards, around governance is absolutely key, especially when looking at emerging markets. And I think there is a role for them to play across Asia, across Africa. However, they tend to neglect certain areas. So, you know, they're not really interested in India, and there's 800 million people under the age of 35. So now we're in 80 countries. We want to support everyone. We want to be the first group holding a conference in India. Because that's where the growth is. That's where the future talent is going to be. And, you know, connected with that, really, I've got a question around when there is talent in somewhere like India. I know a lot of them quite often reach out to me. So what is the opportunity when it comes to hybrid roles for me? You know, I'm talented, I'm here, I'm interested, but, you know, the job's at home anyway. Why can't I be involved in that?
Yeah, I agree. We've had that on many occasions, people approaching us from India and different parts of Asia as well, saying, you know, I've seen this job. It talks around being a UK national, or, you know, needing to have eligibility to work in the UK. I think that there does seem to be a bit of a blanket, you know, you need to have a working visa to work in the company, right or wrong. Well, probably wrong, but, you know, it does restrict talent, I think. But that just does seem to be the general policy that a lot of organizations are doing. So I agree, there's a lot of untapped talent. Where there's opportunity, though, is we're seeing with this sort of the outsource model, where that does create opportunities. And a lot of that talent then we are seeing migrating into different parts of the world, particularly in places like India, where they're, not just from, outbound sort of outsourcing of the resource and contact centers and things like that. We're seeing a lot of that increasingly being in those parts of the world. There's a big FTSE organization now that's been really successful, and then they've actually hired a lot of their category management team over there as well, which is great. I think that'll be a common theme and a trend as labor costs go up here in the UK, because it's expensive to hire. I'm not just talking about us as an agency. I'm talking about, the salaries over here now and cost of living challenges we're having in the UK. I think it's become more attractive and more appealing to organizations to employ overseas. I think, without getting too political on this show, with some of the tax increases that inevitably we're going to be seeing in the autumn budget, I think that's going to have a real knock-on effect. Actually, I'm actually quite worried about that, and the impact that will have on the talent pool in procurement, in recruitment, and in the wider economy here in the UK.
Yeah, just on that point, because one of the things that's coming or being discussed with regards to coming is, first of all, the rights that you get from day one, whereas 2 years down the line it used to be. So if you get a mishire now, you're kind of stuck with them, even if after day one you've got a problem.
Yeah.
And the second one is, on day one, people can insist on having a 4-day week. And I think about certain roles and certain companies, and I'm thinking, well, how's this going to work?
I don't think it can, Alex. I mean, I know this wasn't something we're necessarily going to talk about. It scares me. It really does. This 4-day working week. I don't see how it's sustainable here. I don't think it's been really thought through. I mean, it's obviously going through some of the trade unions and discussing it, aren't they, at the moment internally in government? But I don't see how that will work. How's that going to work in retail? How's that going to work in hospitality? Those sectors particularly. I'm not sure. If I was to turn around to all my clients and say, "Oh, well, my team are off. It's a Friday," business still goes, right?
Yeah,
Sorry, guys.
I think unless you do
a working week.
No, I think unless you do a Dubai where you say, look, everybody finishes lunchtime on a Friday, and we go to a 4.5-day week. Unless you change the culture of the country, I don't think you can make it so as when you're opening a cafe and there's one person that's working in it 5 days a week, and they say, look, I only want to work 4. Well, we've got to employ 2 people then. And we can't afford that. Yeah,
definitely. Well, also, you're thinking about it now, and I when I say this comment, I love the fact this is the case. If I look at my team, they're all on home-based contracts. They leave the front door, they expense it. Great. So that's the first thing. We give you flexibility in where you work. Amazing. If you want to use our office, a co-working space, you can go and do that where you see fit. I think we pay them fairly, etc. So which is one example of that, obviously. But then if you then so you've got all this flexibility, you're encouraging and stimulating sort of growth in the market, in the economy. We're there to help people employ, people in organizations as well as our own. And then you then add on the extra layer of the 4-day. If we were working every day in the office, it was mandated. Let's say the UK had to do that, and it was 5 days in, you must work every day in the office. I kind of get you might get burnout and maybe want to do that, but I just think it's a bit of a step too far. But we'll see how it plays out. It does worry me. I try not to read too much on it. I don't agree with it. But if it's there, right? But again, back to the point around India and Asia, that is going to further, mean that particularly some of the big FTSEs, they're not going to want to stay in the UK market, are they? Your tax is going to go up. Your employers are going to have even more rights in terms of the 4-day working week. It just doesn't become a commercially viable country to employ your staff in. Yeah.
On that happy note, I think there's one last question, and then we should finish with this. Namdi's question really was, how do you select 3 or 2 strong candidates for a position when they've got similar scores within the interview? How do you fine it down to say, look, we think you should see these 3?
I'll go back to Namdi's great quote above, saying, make yourself memorable during an interview, say what others aren't saying. I love that. So I'd almost, you've answered brilliantly.
You refer to his point.
which I love. I'm gonna steal that. That's great. But yeah, look, I think if someone, what we tend to find with our clients, and everyone's different, but if it's down to 2 or 3 people, there is a subjective view. There is that sort of gut feel, that cultural alignment, and that's ultimately the differentiator. So if they just feel that person is a little bit more engaged with the business, they might be on a shorter notice period. I don't think salary wise, I think procurement, I very rarely have had people saying they're on less money. That doesn't tend to happen. That generally doesn't. But I think it might be availability. We actually had it with a client the other day, one of our tech clients. They offered another candidate because they're available immediately. There was a coin toss between two, and they just went with the one that was more readily available. So I think that's pretty common. But yeah, it will tend to go down to the view of the hiring manager, where they just feel that person is culturally a little bit more engaged, and therefore maybe they feel longer term that they'll probably keep the person for longer, and there's more opportunity for them. That's probably if it comes down to it.
Perfect. Thank you. When we look at your space on Alchemie Network, it gets really good traction. So there's some great material that you're posting on there to assist people on their journey of finding that new role or growing as a person. There's also lots of roles that Poppy's constantly posting on there. I recommend that people tune in on Thursday to the Talent Talks podcast when it's out. Find it, go listen to it. Harold posted in the chat the archives, so go back and listen to them. There's even one where I'm talking, not so long ago, a couple of months ago.
We just launched it. You just launched. Yeah, great.
Yeah, we had. That's right. It was the first couple of weeks of our launch. What's next for Talent Drive? Where are you going to take this?
Yeah, so I think for us, we're going to start doing more internationally. Kind of sort of going back from what I just said. Then I think there's lots of opportunities internationally. We're working with a lot of candidates internationally that contact us all the time saying, "Can we help?" In France, in Germany, and other parts of North America and Asia. So we want to broaden our proposition outside the UK, where we're predominantly focused. We want to build further our interim proposition. We want to build further our sort of supply chain and public sector offering, and grow it in a sustainable way. There is some opportunities potentially to diversify as well. We've also got talent finance, so there might be opportunities there in other sectors as well as we grow the talent group, and just keep building the brand. I try. Every year I write a business plan and I rip it up at the end of the year because it's not right. I've been, I'll write one again this year, and I have got one this year. But you don't know what's going on in the economy, the team. So as long as we keep supporting our community, keep building, keep focusing on our values and what we're doing right, I'll be really happy.
Yeah, well, look, I rewrite ours every second day, but luckily I have Harold to bring me back to reality and say,
it's the balance.
Shut up. Shut up.
Martin, one question from me. So besides having the vacancies and the information posted in your space here on the Alchemie, how can Alchemie as a community platform help candidates, hiring managers, to go through the process of recruiting?
Yeah, I think more just videos and tutorials and tips kind of we talk about today, like how to prep for interviews, what does good look like on a CV, maybe even things around sort of offer management and some of that sort of process, counter offers, which is quite prevalent, we've not spoke about today. But yeah, I think more just sort of tutorials and insights around actually how to put your CV out to market, how to sell yourself. I think that's probably the other thing. A lot of the procurement community are so brilliant internally focused, and it's almost that first time to kind of externally go, I'll join on a podcast or I'll do a blog, or we don't need everyone to be in front of camera talking for an hour and a half or whatever. But I think it's just giving your community the confidence to go out there and talk about themselves and their community and what they do, because there's so many amazing procurement people globally that are doing so much great stuff and we don't know about it. So I think it's just sharing the message and continuing to give people the confidence to go out there and talk about themselves.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you.
And I think we've talked a lot about candidates today and that what you give them in your space. But I just want to say, if anybody is out there thinking about making a hire over the next 6 months, reach out through the space to Martin and the team. There's some really talented recruiters there, and they're ready to help you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity for joining you. I'm so pleased to see it's all thriving at Alchemie Network. So yeah, well done, guys.
Thank
Thanks
you,
very
Martin.
much. Cheers, Martin.
Thanks
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.